Thank you very much for having me here. I've been working with this community for about the past 10 to 15 years. As per my wonderful introduction, I am a Georgetown faculty member. I'm chief of the Neuroethics Studies program and hold a professorship in both the Department of Neurology as well as the Department of Biochemistry. My particular set of interests have been in the development of advancing areas of neuroscience and neurotechnology, with particular deep dive with regard to neurotech. What I'll try to do is at least raise the specter of your suspicion and perhaps of your awareness of what not only is capable right now, but also what may be possible and very probable within the next 5 to 10 years as a horizon of possibility. Out of disclosure, some of the work that I'm doing here today is funded by the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories. I'm also funded by the European Union Human Brain Project, specifically the Sub-Project 12, where I'm a task leader for dual-use brain science. And I've also done some ongoing work with the Strategic Multi-Level Assessment crew over the past 10 years at the Pentagon, that's Dr. Kabayan's group, and with DARPA. Nothing I'm saying here today is wholly representative of any one of those organizations and does not necessarily reflect their opinions or views, but in some cases is strongly aligned with same, as I've been contributory to some of those perspectives. The idea of integrative scientific convergence brings together a whole host of capability under a broad rubric of brain science. So if we're talking about bioscience and technology, pharmacology, engineering, genetics, this all falls within the rubric of an integrated neuroscience. Again, being realized over the past 14 to 20 years. There are 3 letters I'd like you to remember. Easy to remember. A, and A. That's what the brain sciences do. Allow access to the brain, allow us to assess the brain, and allow us to affect the brain. So what we see is that neuroscience had made huge leaps, utilizing a whole host of ever more sophisticated technologies, some of them from within the neurosciences and others from beyond. Increasingly, the boundary between neuroscience and engineering has become seamless. That said, what this has now done is put the brain literally at our fingertips of investigation, parting the proverbial curtains of the vagaries of what the structures and functions of the brain may do, but also parting those curtains of capability to allow us to literally go in up to the elbows to be able to assess, affect, manipulate, and control the brain. That said, that sets the stage for us to then regard neuroscience and technology, what we call neuro-S&T, as a viable weapon. Anything that I use to affect you in any way is a weapon. So if we take a look at what is capable here, we see that neurosciences can, are, and increasingly will be used as weapons in these contexts. And these contexts then assume 2 discrete operational windows of opportunity. Who is going to be the big player in this increasingly as we move towards 2025? China. The more we know about the way people think and tick, the more we may be able to develop those techniques and technologies to alter the way they think and tick. A key example of this latter function exists within a DARPA program called Neural Networks or Narrative Networks. The program manager there was Bill Casebeer, currently at Lockheed, that specifically used methods of the brain sciences and interaction with a variety of neuroscientific laboratories to develop a deeper and keener understanding of the way brains work, to be able to develop insights to the way people think and how they can be influenced through information management and psychological operations to therefore mitigate volatility to violence and aggression. So clearly I can affect others by either what I'm doing, making me better, or what I do to them, making them, quote, less better, or at very, very least, not wanting to fight. Moreover, we recognize we can also use a variety of microbiological agents to incur a whole host of morbidities, but not necessarily mortality. Earlier this morning, we had a general who spoke to all of us, and he gave us a very rousing message and talked to us how specifically we need to engage science and technology. If I were, for example, able to modify the coffee that he drank, the water that he drank this morning, with an undetectable chemical that was delivered at a very, very low range, and he gets up before you and he says, "This is all bunk, ladies and gentlemen, you shouldn't be here in this room. I don't believe a word of what I'm going to hear, and my particular concern is, with regard to the United States Army, is we should move in other directions, and we should basically work on potting flowering plants." You think one of 2 things. Either he's completely gone wackadoodle and lost his rocker, or I'm going to follow this guy to the end of the earth because he's not only a power-driven leader, he is in fact a charismatic leader who I believe in. So the ability to affect a single individual, whether it is a military leader, a political leader, or a diplomat, through the use of modifiable brain functions at very, very low levels of non-detectable drugs that exist in the high nano range, is in fact creating a ripple effect by virtue of their followers. Either an affiliative effect or a disruptive effect.
James Giordano, PhD professor at the University of Georgetown, was presenting the Neurotechnology and National Security and Defense. This was back in 2017. I want to get into this because I've long had this theory about why these school shootings happen and why all this goes down the way it does and what could be infecting these kids. And this sort of proves it. When you look at the timeline and you look at where it is, it at least raises questions. I don't know if it proves it, but it raises questions that I want to get into. So let's get into it.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
Hello and welcome to another Wednesday night. Thursday night. I keep doing that. I said that last week too. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I'll get it straight and remember what day it is soon enough. I wanted to kind of just touch base with on this shooting thing. So first of all, prayers to the families, who lost their kids. It's absolutely insane that these things keep happening, and I can't help but look at this from a macro level. And it was about a year ago, maybe a little less. I don't remember. The week's kind of a blur, but I did this. Piece on part two on on James Giordano, who is a chief. What is he? The chief of neuroethics at Georgetown University. I put a link in all of the streams. So whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or X, and it's an amazing watch. There's no way I could have put it all into that 5 minutes, but I'm going to deep dive into that for a little bit because I honestly am starting to think that it's in somehow related to all of these shootings. Explain that. I'll explain that. I just want to make sure that everybody know first of all, thank you to everybody on X who has followed recently because I've hit the 900 mark or crossed the 900 mark. As most of you know, my goal was to get to 1,000. That's where they start to give you statistics and like show when your viewership is watching, all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like the first threshold. And for those that are new, I've been trying to migrate. I've got about 18,000 on Facebook, although I don't know how they're doing it, but people are following. They're giving me notifications that a bunch of people followed, but the number doesn't move up. But then a couple days later, it goes down a few, and they've been doing this for months. So I'm glad I made the decision to try and migrate. So if you're watching on Facebook, get over to X and give me a follow there. I much appreciated. There's a link to that in the descriptions of each platform's description. There's also a Rumble link in there as well. I would love to get to 1,000 on Rumble too. The most watched I get on Rumble. Into they don't unless it's the same people every week. It could be too. I know Facebook. A lot of people come to the actual page because Facebook doesn't alert very much. So just help me out there. I would definitely appreciate it. Also, got the new shirt in print. I actually got it in this week. So I redesigned the unity is greater than diversity, added in an e pluribus unum, and it is my first shirt with Trump 2024 on it. So even though I support Trump and all that, I haven't put out a lot of Trump T-shirts or any Trump T-shirts. So I did add a hashtag Trump 2024. Any international folks that would like a version, without it, I'm not going to get into every single world leader, but or every single leader you want, but I can't take it off so it's neutral for a different country because I know the suffering is going on worldwide, not just in the United States. All right, so we're getting into this Giordino character, and I also, by the way, started reading a book called Good Energy. And I'm going to talk about it when I'm done with this DARPA piece. But I just want to let everyone know if you're in a situation, if you're inspired by RFK's position on the FDA and what's been going on with food and all of these things, and really just why everyone's been getting so sick, right? And just getting to the crux of it, right? Instead of just, well, you've got diabetes, take this pill. You've got this, take that pill. Fatty liver, take this pill. And it's all about just taking a pill. Nothing ever fixes anything, and no one ever explains why you have it, right? This book, Good Energy, and I'm going to get into that. I'm not done with the book yet, but I'm a few chapters in, and I can tell you it's available in audiobook as well. I can tell you that it's definitely this woman is on the right track, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But on to the DARPA piece. So, yeah, he said regular shenanigans here in Massachusetts doing our primary elections on Tuesday. Coming from Rumble, by the way. 2024, 3 a.m. ballots, changing results in the state level Senate race here in Cape Cod area. I mean, are we shocked, Mike? Are we shocked? It's unbelievable. I see regional, the whole East Coast, but select states for convention of states, and active on a local level and a macro level in the ongoings of legislatures and civics in general. And kudos to Mike for that. We need more human beings like that. Exactly. A patient cured is a farmer customer lost, right? And that's what we always say. And they get into this. I saw this woman had her name up, and I lost that page. I'm going to pull it up later though. It's Casey, the name now, but she and her brother were both and they very she walked away from a surgeon's career to get to the bottom of it, did and apparently has done a great job and breaks it all down and speaks, I don't want to say layman's terms, but it's as dumbed down as you can get the explanation for how your body works and why things are going on. And it all comes down to diet, really. I mean, the diet, obviously, you need a little exercise in it too, but most of the stuff that we deal with, the diabetes, fatty liver, all these different conditions are all tied to diet. And I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. But I want to get into this Giordino. So he did this lecture, this speech. Um, I want to say, but it was 2016, I believe he did this so that's what makes the whole thing creepy because he gets into a variety of different topics and he's explaining to a group at a seminar, and like after him was coming an actual ethics panel to review what I guess you would call weird science, and they've been researching this for a long time, ways to manipulate the brain, ways to get people to do, say, feel things that they normally wouldn't do, say, or feel, and they're there, okay? Because he talks about it in the video as being 5 to 6 years out, and that was in 2016, 17. So we're there, all right? Things that he says during this, it's creepy as hell. And the reason I'm bringing it up again, not is obviously because it's creepy, but also because when you put the timeline together, what is it that we've been dealing with these school shootings, right? Because I didn't grow up with school shootings. Like this was not a thing when like there. I don't even remember one. I mean, maybe there was one, but I was in school in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. I don't recall any school shootings happening. Now some of it, may be different media and things, but the media would have reported a mass school shooting nationwide, and they did not. So all of a sudden, though, in the last 10 to 15 years, these things are becoming regular. And right after they happen, they get politicized immediately. Immediately. like, oh, we're sorry, we're praying for the parents, but this is why we can't have guns and blah blah. And it's like they immediately hit with the gun agenda. And I've suggested this quite a few times actually, and every time I did it, people were just like, "You're crazy, you're crazy." But I'm like, you need to listen to what they have the capability of doing. And now, in the context of seeing, I mean, if you're still in a world where you don't think deep state popped the shot at Trump, right? Like, I mean, that investigation is done. We're not. The story is the lone shooter, right? Sound familiar? Lone shooter was killed. We're done. Be the end of the story. The FBI hasn't said boo about it. The media has all but forgotten it. It's just like, well, wait a minute. Wasn't there just an assassination? Like, no, no. What assassination attempt? That's what it seems to look like. See that? It drives me a little nuts. The lag in my voice again, even though I just like stopped this thing, reset it, restarted the computer, the whole 9 yards. I may have to lessen the amount of streams. I don't know. I bought a pretty beast mode computer to do gap about, but apologize if you are. I want to get into some of these clips I want to get into some of these clips of this dude with okay, maybe it's just me, but or me misreading equipment or whatever. Creepy things that this dude says in the seminar. And again, the link is in all, I just put the link in all the comments across. So all the platforms have the link to the full video. It's probably an hour long, but I'm telling you, if you watch it in terms of would deep state use this type of tech on its own people, if you is sure they would, then this is an amazing watch because it opens your eyes to a lot of. We all know they have these crazy that there's some crazy capabilities. We don't know details about them. This guy gets into detail about.
I go to Des Moines. Early this morning, we had
I
General
infect a
spoke
couple
to
of
all of us,
sentinel
and he gave us
cases
a
in Des
very
Moines.
rousing message and talked to us how specifically
I go
we
to
need
Seattle.
to engage science and
I
technology.
infect a couple of cases there.
I go to North Carolina. I go to Wisconsin. What I'm doing is I'm using a dispersion methodology to be able to.
All right. So this one, all right, this portion, I know he gets into a few different scenarios, okay, but this particular scenario, all right, was this was to all right. So if the government, he talks about neurotechnology, just to give you a backdrop, he talks about neurotechnology and how it can be used to assess the brain, manipulate the brain, do all these things to the brain. And then he starts to get into practical uses on why the Department of Defense would use these sorts of things. Now, I don't want to throw James Giordano under the bus because I think he's just this is number one. It's 2017, so no COVID, nothing's happened yet. We're still in the illusion. We're still living in the illusion, and he, from the way he talks, seems to firmly believe that the ethics board that's going to speak after he speaks will be able to handle and iron out all of these ethical issues, and that these things will never. You could tell by the way he talks. He doesn't believe these things will be used, against American people or anything like that. He believes, he thinks about it only in terms of Department of Defense. All right, and yes, the research is funded by DARPA. It's funded by various DoD organizations. So, but basically, he paints this scenario, and he painted a few of how it can be used. One was to break the trust between government and the people. All right, and he explains this scenario, which I'm going to get into right now. Here we go.
Early this morning, we had General who spoke to all of us, and he gave us a very rousing message and talked to us how specifically we need to engage science and technology. If I were, for example, able to modify the coffee that he drank, the water that he drank this morning, with an undetectable chemical.
I'm sorry, guys. Are you seeing the video move there? Because I'm not seeing it. Let me. Always something with this. Close it out. Close that out.
I go to Des Moines. I infect a couple of sentinel cases in Des Moines. I go to Seattle. I infect a couple of cases there. I go to North Carolina. I go to Wisconsin. What I'm doing is I'm using a dispersion methodology to be able to infect sentinel cases with a highly morbid condition. These individuals complain. Again, this is a central nervous system condition. So they're
I don't know about you, but the first thing that came to my mind was COVID. Mind you, this was 3 years, 4 years before COVID.
complaining of whatever the bug may do. It'll produce some cascade of neurological and neuropsychiatric signs and symptoms. And then what I do, the real bug that I use is the internet. I take attribution for that. Yes, I'm a terrorist group. And I have done this by infecting them with a highly lethal agent, and the first signs and symptoms of lethality are X, Y, and Z. These people are really sick with this. But then I say, others who are also infected will show subdromal, predromal signs of lethality, and what that will be is anxiety, sleeplessness, agitation. What I've now done is I've got every individual who is diagnostically hypochondriacal, and I've got every individual who's the worried well flooding the public health system, banging on the door. The CDC comes back and says, nonsense, that's not real. I come back and say, that's fake news. And as a consequence of doing that, what I do is I create a schism between the polis and the public health system. I fracture the integrity of trust and reliance upon the population and its government.
All right, sorry, I had Facebook had paused out on me there. I hope you guys at Facebook have caught up. All right, and now I have page open. So my apologies to people on Facebook. Apparently, there was a break in the stream. They didn't want, I guess, that tends to happen. That tends to happen on the Facebook platform. One of the reasons why I would like to make a jump. But that being said, someone just texted me, then they're probably saying, hey, you froze on Facebook. All right, good to go. So, but you hear what he's saying, right? You hear what he's saying, so that they can create this microbe, go to 3 or 4 different states, give a infect one person, another person, and then just kind of sit back and wait and let this let them go spread it around, and then you start your narrative, right? Oh, I'm a terrorist organization. I did this, right? Or, it's the Wuhan lab leak, right? That's what came to me. And then from there, now I'm not saying this was COVID. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. So COVID was global. It was bigger than this, but I'm just making the point, right? Of the motive, like why pick that motive to break trust between government? Like it just kind of leads into the whole, like I've been saying this before, there's a reason why we don't trust government, and government is struggles to now in our case now they're a hot mess, right? We know government's a hot mess right now. This is why Article 5 is necessary. This is why I broadcast the way I do and have the conversations that I do about the calling of a convention of states, because the federal government is epically broken. But this guy is suggesting that not only it's not a theory that he's suggesting, he's talking about things that that we're capable of doing. And anything he speaks about in that entire hour that we are not capable of at that time in 2017, he says we're about 5 years away, 5 or 6 years away, which is right now, folks. Right? So he's saying, so they let these people go out. Now the people he's claiming, all right, we did this, this was us who did this. Here's what's going to happen, and blah 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 blah. And he knows what's going to happen because they engineered this bug, as he calls it. So now these people start experiencing those symptoms, but it's such trace amounts that the CDC and no one else, even if they're trying to be legitimate, can't find it. So they're calling it. They're saying there's nothing to worry about. And then the terrorist organization comes out and says that's fake news. And now you realize, people, it spreads around enough. You start to know people who are having these issues, and now you're not trusting the CDC, right? And now they've effectively disabled an entire, like a very significant, of all the government organizations to be corrupt, for the CDC to have gone down the path it did with COVID, you know, was the worst probably government organization that could have done that. And imagine that was done, if that was done on purpose, right? Now, another method that he talks about is slipping something in someone's coffee. I don't think I have. Yeah, I do actually have that. So I think I have it. I think this is. So here's one where he talks about being like having something that's readily available to slip into someone's coffee that can change the way they think. So I want to.
Early this morning, we had a general who spoke to all of us, and he gave us a very rousing message and talked to us how specifically we need to engage science and technology. If I were, for example, able to modify the coffee that he drank, the water that he drank this morning, with an undetectable chemical that was delivered at a very, very low range, and he gets up before you and he says, "This is all bunk, ladies and gentlemen, you shouldn't be here in this room. I don't believe a word of what I'm going to hear, and my particular concern is, with regard to the United States Army, is we should move in other directions, and we should basically work on potting flowering plants." You'd think one of two things. Either he's completely gone wackadoodle and lost his rocker, or I'm going to follow this guy to the end of the earth because he's not only a power-driven leader, he is in fact a charismatic leader who I believe in. So
All right. So you see where I'm going with this? If not, let me try and help to tie it back in. So he now talks about something that he can slip in the guy's coffee. The general he was talking about was a speaker at that very thing, at that very event right before him. All right. And he was talking about the importance of technology. And what he's saying is I could slip something in his coffee that will have him come back out here and speak the exact opposite of everything that he had gone out and already spoken on, and basically tell you, get rid of all technology, technology's useless, peace, love, and no war, and just and have a totally different viewpoint than he had when he came on. Now that should scare the freaking life out of everyone, because that's just power that no one should have. All right. And where I'm going with this is, look at this timeline. So he's in 2017 saying, you know, these are capabilities we have. He mentioned some others that'll be out in 5 years. But like when you look at it, how would he know if they are, right? If they already had these capabilities, like, I know he believes, I'm sure he does, in his heart of hearts, that it would be public knowledge. It would, even if it wasn't public knowledge, there would be ethics committees and other people that would get to see it. But anyone who understands the history of deep state knows these three-letter alphabet agencies, they have no interest in keeping good people in the loop. And sometimes with some things, even the president, they feel like they don't need. Now, the idea that these kids could be getting messed with, right, in an effort to try and disarm the population is not, at one time, might have been far-fetched. But right now, like, I honestly don't believe that it is. Right? I think if I knew for 100% fact, right, and I think I do after listening to him talk, but like if I saw a demonstration of how this could be used, and see them put something in someone's coffee and effectively make that person think a different way, or do a different thing, or not be themselves, right? And not only not be themselves, because you could give people stuff that makes them loopy or wacky or whatever, makes them seem crazy, but to give them stuff that makes them have an opinion that you specifically designed a drug to have, I mean, that's beyond the creepiness of even AI in some way, because now it's not a manipulated piece. Now it's not something that's that somebody tampered with or whatever. Now it's, they didn't manipulate the video and make you say this, and it's not really you. It really is you. Like, you could be at a live event and everyone there is like, no, that's not tampered with. That's exactly what he said. Like, imagine Trump coming out and being like, you know what? We need to open the border. We need to leave the border as it is. It's fine. Like, imagine he came out and said that. Like there's just so many disgusting possibilities with technology like that, that it almost makes me I almost feel like, Mike, if you're still out there, it almost makes me feel like on the whole Article 5 front, that we should start considering, right? Some sort of amendment that's broad and sweeping and covers just about anything that these freaks can think of when it comes to mind manipulation, or the manipulation of individual choice. Because if you don't have that, then you don't have anything. Don't have anything. Easily, snugly fit under the government overreach topic. I mean, when what drives all these kids, they say, oh, they all had issues, they all had, yeah, well, how long has someone been manipulating them, right? Whether it be through, I mean, he also says they could use images, they could use, like, there's all kinds of, they've been testing this stuff, folks, for like 40 years. Usable for maybe 15 or 20, but it's been heavily tested as far as deep state is concerned, almost since the birth of deep state, maybe 15 years in, 10 years in, to alter what. Now, can I see how this could be effective as defense technology and whatnot? Sure. But do I rest with James Giordano, where he says, because I know how he feels, at least I got the feeling of how he feels, and that's that, and he mentions China multiple times. All right, that they're already doing this and they don't share our ethics, so they'll be that's a whole different threat. That's ability. Now, that being said, the Chinese can't invent anything. So they used to be the innovators of all things. 1949, something's going to get invented in China. Have every piece of tech they have, every advancement they've made is stolen technology, every bit of it. With that being said, because what Giordano mentions is that the tech is actually open source. It's not exactly a straight government secret. Some of it is used in medical, in actual, I don't understand what medical use they would have for it, but I'm sure the real creepy level stuff is under DOD, DOD wraps. Said, who's to say that the CCP doesn't have moles in the DOD? I mean, it's as incompetent right now as it will ever be. Incompetent as it's ever been, and it's incompetent as it will ever be. There will never be a more incompetent DOD than the one we have now. 1960s, you do. For all the capabilities that they have, they're not regularly. They've pretty much lost it all right now. It all. And have now found themselves in a place where assassinating a president was the president that, if in office, will expose all this crap. Not going to, when those chief of staff or whoever the individuals are, go up to him and try and lead him around as to how the job is done. He's not listening. When that person goes to his, whoever ends up running Homeland Security, and that guy right beneath the director, right, because the director changes with appointments and presidents, the guy right behind him who walks him around and goes, here's how, because that person walks into the role usually overwhelmed. Only one I could think of that wouldn't have been overwhelmed would be Bush Senior, because he was already knee deep in all that crap on his way up. He's like, "Man, come on, kid, you don't got to tell me. I know that I invented this game. I created half the stuff you're talking about." So, making government propaganda against citizens of America, high felony AI. Like that, I like that idea. Yeah, yeah, there would be a lot fewer sheeple. Yeah, I agree 100%, Mike. Right, and that's the point. And that's the point, is that like there are certain things like, because if you guys, for those who have been following the convention of states movement for a while, there have been certain amendments that we've been talking about that have kind of become staples, right? Like a single subject amendment, or a balanced budget amendment, or you know amendments against regulatory agency power and things like that. I've kind of over the years gotten outside the box a little bit, like Mike had just mentioned with AI. Like AI is a big deal. Like we need protections against this stuff. I could tell you of all every time I think the founders thought of didn't think of everything, I find out they did. But AI is the one thing where like who the hell would have thunk that in the 1700s, right? Like who's gonna think that we're gonna create actual beings that can think for themselves and do their own make decisions and make decisions on the fly and like do like who would have thought of it? Who would have thought that this kind of world would happen? I mean, now mind you, there are a ton of science fiction enthusiasts and futurists who believed it was going to time, but not in the 1700s. There were in the 50s and 60s there were, right, but not until then. So crazy technology, and it just makes me wonder if this is something that's involved, even if it's not deep state, if someone else has hold of the tech, someone creepier, someone from, like one of the pure globalists above deep state, right? That are causing all of these issues all throughout the world, right? Someone's organizing it. It's not like the whole world. It's not like every Muslim in the world just decided to emigrate to another country. Somebody promised them some stuff that this is going to be your way to spread Islam throughout the world and all this, and they bought it, and they're going to go create chaos because that's what the globalists need, right? That's what the Marxist movement needs. They need people to go out there and create chaos. Every single movement has had it, right? Hitler had Antifa, right? Or Antifasciste Action. They were called then, same symbols, same flag, same everything. Yeah, but they got to have those minions, right? That'll go out and cause damage. And then once the damage is done, and if the movement is successful, well, then the Islamists will be like, all right, it's time for our caliphate, and then the globalists just it doesn't matter. Soviets called them useful idiots. All those people who march in the streets and they killed them all immediately after, because once those people realized it was all an illusion, once those people realized that there is no, that it's going to be tyranny, that's what they supported, they become the most adamant people against it. But it's too late at that, and they're already identified, so they just kill them to hide from you. like those aren't, you're not going to find gold in their safe. You know what I'm saying? So, but I don't know. I'm curious to know what people think about it, because whether it's during the live broadcast, I'll highlight it, or if it's after the fact. I'm curious to know how crazy people think I am for making that suggestion after hearing this individual. And I would tell you, before you do call me crazy, watch the whole thing. That I put the link in all the platforms, right? If you can't find the link because there's too many comments or something like that, go to YouTube. Nobody ever comments on you. Just saying. YouTube is the place to go for if you need to. If I put a link up and you can't find it, I still stream to YouTube just because there are 1,400 followers there, subscribers there, whatever. So I feel obligated to them in some way, even though Lord knows they probably never see the content, because it's the same kind of deal with Facebook, 18,000 followers, but like 58 impressions, right? And if you're going to get 100 people to watch, you're going to need like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 impressions if you're going to get 100 people on at once. Right? How many times you see a broadcast, even if you like the guy, you're like, ah, no, no. Right? So, but it just bugs me out that that's the case. And I do, the more and more time goes on, the more I am believing. I'm just typing in right now. To get, yeah, Casey. So I want to talk a little bit about this book because I saw her being interviewed, and if you put like Casey Means or it's really her brother, I think, um, that Beck was, and they were having this conversation. Now Beck was focused on, the fact that the tobacco companies, large, once they realized cigarettes were going to be so heavily regulated, they started moving into food and buying food companies like crazy. And there's all these sick percentages about how many food companies R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris owns, and they did all this in the 90s. And the suspicion there was that, you know they took the same scientists and people that they have on board for tobacco and used those people to help figure out what would make food more addictive, and as we all know now was the answer. And then boom, ultra processed products just started flowing like crazy. And and it kind of explains, because I kind of thought it was ultra processed stuff, you know But now that I'm thinking about it, though, we didn't have this obesity issue in the '80s. We were eating, we were eating yodels and, like processed food, right? Like, or at least mass produced, right? Mass produced food. I guess there's a difference between mass produced and processed in that sense, right? So maybe the yodels didn't have as long a shelf life, or, whatever the situation may be. But that's, kind of super excited. I watched his whole speech on dropping out, and when I did, I was just kind of like, I mean, mind you, he's an uber liberal. I can't, I get that argument, right? Like, he's for birth, right? He's for things that I find egregious. I'm not voting for him for president, but I would love to see him. I would love to see him in heading the FDA, or at least being a watchdog over the FDA, right? Where he can have an impact, right? Because I think he could do a lot of good. And the whole Kennedy and Trump alliance thing, to me, is just I think it's awesome. So I got a lot of pushback from people saying how are you going to freaking support this guy and blah 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 blah. It's like we got to bring ourselves back to a day where we focused on what we agreed on. If there's an issue that's incredibly important to this country, somebody's on the right side of that issue, but we believe they're on the wrong side of a different issue. It's like we're throwing babies out with bathwater, right? Like, I don't know. Brian Kroll, Ultra MAGA Patriots Forever, Trump 2024. Yep. And if you missed it, Brian, I got the first shirt that I put Trump on. I never really did the straight politics thing. I was mostly messages, and this is as well. Remember, unity is greater than diversity. E pluribus unum, and then hashtag Trump 2024, available at thepatriotthinktank.com. So, thank you for commenting, Brian. But when you look at that alliance, I just feel like it's symbolic matter. I say this all the time. Symbols absolutely matter, and the symbolic nature, and we can use some of this for convention of states as well, for the same Democrats. Those same Democrats that are still sane, right? They're still humanity. They may not, they may be against us in a bunch of policies, but they still don't want women going, all this garbage being taught in our schools. They still, like, they see what's going on, right? Those are the people. I mean, he was up to 10% at one point, and I guarantee you, there's a lot more of those people than 10% of the Democrat vote. Like there's a lot more of those. They were still Democrats. They just couldn't vote. They couldn't vote for Marxism. That's what it came down to. And that's why I also say all the time there are no Democrats and Republicans. There are people who love America, and there are Marxists. Everyone on the Democrat platform is on the side of the Marxists. Period. Period. You have to say, I don't believe in Marxism because you're voting for it. Right? That's a barometer. That's something that we can look at tangibly and be like, but I'm no Marxist. But you're going to vote for Marxism. She selected Tim Walz, whose brother, by the way, you may have heard, endorsed Trump. He didn't actually. It was more of a bashing of his brother than it was an endorsement for Trump. But from his comments, he's voting for Donald Trump. Like, you don't need to hear him say, this is Tim Walz's own brother. And then he had extended family out there. I guess it was the grandfather's side of the family or something like that. They're in a picture with all Trump shirts on. Stuff up. I mean, Tim Walz, I mean, look, let me give you
Earlier this morning, we had a gentleman who spoke to all of us, and he gave us a very rousing message and talked to us how specific.
From Tim Walz. Let me get set in here so you don't hear all kinds of reverb. And here he is.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
That's all you need to hear from an individual to understand that they're Marxist. That's it. There's no guarantee to free speech. Actually, that's exactly what there's a guarantee for. This guy's a loon, okay? And he was probably easily brought on board by the Marxists. He's got great relations with the Chinese government. The dude is a hot mess. And still, they allowed, and I say allowed because Kamala's not making these choices. It's not like Kamala sat there and was like, "Oh, let's see. Well, let's look at the list of candidates for VP." No, Pelosi walked in a room and was like, "You're gonna take Tim Walz," or maybe there was some fight over it, right? Because Pelosi might have liked the guy from Pennsylvania, the governor of Pennsylvania, but whatever the argument between that was not between Kamala and anyone else. It was between two other people. like and whoever was on the bigger whoever the bigger Marxist was, he won. She won. Because this guy's a true doo above all doo-doos. This guy's a hot mess. But they control the polling, right? They could go out there. I mean, they all acted like when RFK endorsed Trump that there was no bump in the polls. Like, this is how you know that it's fake, right? This is how. I mean, there's other ways, but it's one of those things that just no matter what, even if the bump faded away, right? Even if it was just a short bump for a little while, whatever. There's no way on earth you don't get a bump from having a Kennedy endorse a Republican candidate. There's just no way. Happen. Is not going to change his ability to help our children when it comes to, well, it will in the sense that support murdering them. That's not what I meant. I meant it in a way in helping nutrition, right? And figuring out one of these colossal freaking things that has gone on that has destroyed our entire freaking, like our entire food supply, right, has become like poisonous. This book that I'm about to mention to you, though, does. And it's called Good Energy, and it's from what I say. I just gave her name. It was Casey Means. All right. Now, this woman, so you understand her background, all right, was the top of her class at Stanford. So she had grown up. This is what I'm getting it. The way most of us did, believing in the message. Like you work hard. You're going to become a surgeon, and that's what she was. She was a surgeon, and I believe the neck was her focus. And she gets into all of that. And she was about 30. She was just getting. She was started a little while. She was residency for like, I don't know, 10 years or so. She was in her 30s, and she ended up saying, you know what? It started weighing on her that nothing that she ever learned in medical school. And this is the stuff I found incredibly interesting because folks like us don't get an insight into what's going on in school. You have to go to medical school to get that insight, or be very close with someone who's in medical school. But she continues to articulate, much like all of our other professions. All right, what they're training these doctors to do, according to her, is number one, become hyper focused on one part of the body. So everybody is dialed in on one part of the body, and so the whole thing's compartmentalized, right? So no one really gets into what the other guy's doing. Nobody wants to get out of their lane. This is the way they're trained, right? Stay in your lane, do work, right? Do work. If the better option is to not get surgery or not take this drug or not do those things, as long as it's an option to do those things, you do it and you encourage it. And the Duke to do like me, at least in the past, would walk in and be like, all right, doc, if you say that's what I need, then that's what I need. And you just trusted your doctor. And probably, I don't know, maybe up until, I mean, there's still doctors out there probably that you can trust, but not if you're in an HMO and you're just being told to choose, whatever. You get garbage. You get garbage. And it explains the way she puts it. It explains also like why, because you think to yourself, well, come on, you're telling me every doctor, like that many doctors are like out there saying screw the patient? Like, no, they're not. And that's how she explains it is like they believe, right? Because this is what they were taught in medical school. Why? Because the medical schools have, just like every other education system, has been infiltrated for freaking decades on end. Professors see things a certain way. The culture is set a certain way. The culture is set to, not ask questions. And I don't mean to your patient. I mean about the internal workings of how our healthcare system works. Like the idea that they go through this process, come out and be like, you know what? Now you got this huge debt. Yeah, you're making money, but the only way you can continue making money is by not necessarily focusing at all times on the best health of the patient. Sure that, and she gets into some details about how it works, and I mean it's pretty wild, and I haven't gotten to the part yet, but she even explains to you like why nutrition is the core piece, like that's what creates good energy. Like she breaks down for you in I thought they were palatable terms, on how like the body takes in certain different types of food, how it processes those foods, what happens when the wrong foods are there, and it's not like it's just hyper processed carbs. That's what it is, hyper processed carbs. Regular carbs, hyper processed stuff. Least in the diet, she doesn't advocate that, but it's like, but this explains like the things that you're not a doctor, but you just keep seeing are a reality, and you're not buying that when a medical professional tells you they're not. Like Jordan Peterson and his daughter going on that all meat diet, meaning that their health has gotten exponentially better when they went all meat. Now that's drastic, but this good energy book, like they've eliminated, it's the stuff they've eliminated by going all meat. Like the fact that we now know our food pyramid has been upside down. I mean, it's a long time for us to rebuild trust in the people who have lost it. It's going to take a particularly long time to regain that trust. It's just where we're at. Get a lot worse, right? And we don't know what happened, but we're in prime conditions for a mass formation to be created, and that scares me as well. Is that, all this free floating anxiety and all that, like, everybody knows something's going to happen, but we don't know what it is. And, like, we know there are bad people out there, but we only know a few of them, right? We don't know all of them. Like there's all of this free floating anxiety that's not attached to anything, and it's all being directed towards Trump right now, as far as the source of the solution. Up, whichever platform you're watching on. I don't think it would be on X because I wasn't engaged with it. I did one on mass formation, Dr. Mateus Desmond. Maybe look it up with the words Dr. Mateus Desmond. But I did a whole thing on this explaining mass formation, how people, end up becoming so irrational, and how they, and it's wild, but it's real. And one of the core things that brings it about, there have to be these pre-existing conditions. One of them is free floating anxiety. One of them is a sense of loneliness. There are others, but like those conditions are coming up again. If you're like me, kind of sitting there just saying, I don't know, I don't know what's next, right? Next, but I know whatever ends up happening from here on in, either before the election or if Trump wins right after it, like, I'm watching China and the BRICS countries, in particular, though, the CCP and Putin buying up gold, right? And it's clearly they're going, because they can't face us militarily. They're going to try and crash the dollar. That happening until they'll just start selling off the dollar, maybe make an announcement. Look at all the secret gold we have that we never reported, but now we're going to try to back the yuan with gold. Like, there's going to be some kind of move like that to help crash the dollar. They're already starting to report that the dollar, that, like, there could be a serious crash coming soon. Don't even need tea leaves. Just watch the enemy news, and watch what they say. Watch what their guests say, right? And it becomes clear at that that is going to happen, even if Trump wins, because the powers that be are beyond the United States. This is a global thing, and they've been staging this possibility for a long time. Dollar. Nixon may not have figured that out. Nixon may not have figured that out personally, because he was a bit of a doo-doo himself when it came to understanding hidden agendas. That as well, when they used him as a bodyguard against the Soviet Union. They got us off the dollar. I mean, they got us off the gold standard, and that whole thing, everything since then, from an economic situation, and they sat back and waited. They just let the Fed screw things up one time next, create the crisis, then come in and try and save us from the crisis that they created as they create another one. It's all unsustainable. Something's got to give if we stay at the level we're at. Trump's not going to stop the spending. That the debt continued to skyrocket at astronomical number. No slowdown there. It's sped up, actually, after every president. It's not like Trump's fault, right? That's why, because it's big problems like that we can solve. People, the government's not going to. There's nothing the federal government is too broken. There's nothing it's going to do to fix it. The states, it's the child's gone crazy, played ball in the house, and broke a vase, and the parents, who are the states, need to give it a spanking. That's exactly what has to happen. Energy, Casey Means, is the book that I am recommending to you. You can Google it real quick. It should come up easily. It's available in audio. I'm not getting paid for that. I'm just telling you, I don't get paid for any of this. I'm just telling you that it's a good book, and that I've only gotten a few chapters in, and I can already tell that it's panning out to be exactly what I thought that I was buying. So I'm definitely stoked to get through the rest of it. I will bring up anything big that comes out of it for those that don't buy it or can't buy it. Um, you know, stay in the know to some degree, but I would tell you to not blindly trust, but don't blind trust, but validate, right? Trust your doctors, but validate, because there are a lot of coconuts out there, a lot of doo-doo-doos who are just going through the motions, and like, and the worse your insurance, right? And God forbid you're on the Obamacare stuff, almost nobody of value takes that insurance. Key that you're getting that doo-doo-doo if you're on that. Sure. Ahead and head out. I got quite a bit to do this evening, but I do want to give a shout out to everybody who commented. Thank you so much. And then if you haven't already, make sure you head over to X and Rumble and give me a follow there. In particular, X. I am truly dialed in on trying to get up on that X platform. I do love my Rumble channel as well. So I would appreciate it if you're a Rumbler, then go over to Rumble and give me some love there. But X is really my focus right now because I hadn't, it's only a few months and I'm almost at 1,000. I'm 100 away from 1,000. So I could definitely appreciate the love. All right, folks. Until next Thursday, I'm out.